Hi, I'm Kathy Wagner, Director of Horticulture for BCC, and welcome to your Fall Container Workshop at home. So you have picked up your Container Garden to Go kit, and now we're going to give you some video instruction on how to complete your kit. The steps for doing the trio large pot and the single large pot are the same. So I'm going to show you a video on how to make the large pot, and then we're going to move on to our smaller pots. So we have your single, probably about a 15-inch to 16-inch wide container. And we have all the plants from our to-go kit. So everything is assembled in your kit that you'll be needing. And you also have a diagram which gives you detailed descriptions of each of the plants. So one of these kits is now in your possession. And I'm going to show you how to make sense of that diagram to put it together. So I have started, as always, by filling my pot to within just a few inches of the top, maybe about 3 to 4 inches from the top. I put a little bit of pine bark mini nuggets at the bottom for good drainage and some fresh soil on top. Now I imagine for most of you, you are changing out a pot from summer color into fall color. And if you have some nice soil that you put in there in the spring, there's no reason to change it all out. Just pull out the summer annuals that are finished for the season and level it off, and you'll be ready to go for fall planting. So I like to start with the biggest stuff first. We have a really beautiful Pennisetum Hamlin here. This is a nice fountain grass. So squeezing the pot, might even have to hammer it just a little bit till it comes loose. This is a whole season of growth. So this is not like in the spring when we have to baby our roots. Everything that we're getting now, maybe with the exception of the pansies, has really sturdy roots. So we've got a really nice mat of roots here. I'm actually going to take my pruners, I'm just going to slice them in a few places to break up this mat of roots, because even trying to claw at that isn't going to do a whole lot. Ooh. So now by cutting the roots, I'm encouraging it to grow into my pot. So this is going to go in the back. You can see by the time we have our pot all the way filled up, it's not even enough room for our grass. So I'm going to take some of the soil out. I'll put it right into the pot that I generated by removing the grass. I have my pot here. This is great to use this soil for backfill afterwards. So I'm just digging out a little hole for this grass. You'll see on your diagram it goes towards the back of your pot. I'm going to wiggle it a little bit to compress it into place. Okay, so then the next thing that we have to put in is this lovely Pallas Purple Heuchera, Coral Bells. If yours has a little, they flowered already, if it has a little finished flower stalk, now's a good time to look at it. If it's got, a dried leaf or something, now's a very easy time to clean it up a little bit. Again, turning it over, tapping the bottom, squeezing it, and very gently cracking it open to encourage rooting. Now I'm going to tuck another hole, sort of digging out into my pot. There's a spot for my Heuchera, plays nicely with my grass there. And I'm going to save most of my backfilling till the end. The next, working from the back to the front, is going to be this lovely autumn fern. So as it sends out new shoots, once it gets established, they always have a really pretty sort of russety colored new frond, so very appropriate for fall. So I'm going to again dig out a little space for this guy, using some of that soil to backfill around my grass here. And I'm going to tuck that fern in. Now you might notice there's also that little L back there for our Lysomachia or Creeping Jenny, but I usually squeeze her in last because she's so adaptable at just fitting into tight places. So now I have my back row finished. And now in the middle, we have an ornamental pepper. This is a Paracho pepper. It has really cute little purple peppers that are just coming. These plants are very nice and fresh, and they're just starting to put on their peppers. This is probably the most tender item that's going into your pot, so this will be the first to suffer from frost damage. I put it in the middle so that hopefully by the time that happens, you'll be able to just remove the dead pepper and the rest of your container will kind of carry itself over. So again, I'm just going to clear out just enough space, making sure that my plants are all sitting about even with each other at the soil level when I'm finished. We don't want anything to get buried. So again, I'm pushing my soil around to sort of fill around it, and I'm creating another channel in the front for my next plant, which is going to be this kale. So this is a white kale, it's going to develop more of a white center as the temperatures drop. A nice young size, although it does have a good mat of roots. Don't be afraid to just tear them off the bottom. Again, we're signaling to the plant that it's time to start growing again. Sometimes we get these little yellow leaves as the season progresses from the bottom. The oldest leaves might senesce. It's okay to just pop those off. Again, teasing the roots a little bit, just sort of cracking it open like a book. Now the kale, we're going to sort of cheat it almost like a trailing plant. I want to make sure you can see the beautiful face. So I usually plant this actually on a 45-degree angle. So I'm going to put a little bit of soil sort of at an angle, and I'm going to tease it into the front. You might want to look at your plant and see, is there one side that it's leaning towards, and put that angle towards the front. And I'm going to sort of push back the soil on the back side, but see how it sort of creeps just a little bit over the edge of the pot, and that's going to grow really nice and full there on the front. Now we're going to add a little bit of true fall flower color with some pansies. So up until now, all the color and texture we've achieved in our pot, it's really just from foliage. So you can do a lot of really strong things with foliage. But we're going to add some pansies. So these are certainly a younger plant. We can be a little bit more careful with them, finding its little hole and filling it in there. Same thing, just very lightly cracking the roots and then putting it right in its space. Make sure that when you put it down, now mine is pretty well level because I've been shifting my soil around, but just make sure that these smaller plants aren't sitting lower than any of the other plants. And now, remember our little creeping Jenny, we're going to turn the pot around and we're going to tuck her into the space. Whether you have more space on the side with the autumn fern or with the heuchera, it doesn't really matter. We just want to have a little pop of color on the back side. This tends to be the shadier side. I have more room by my fern. I'm just going to clean out a little bit of this soil. The Lysimachia, you can really almost let some of that extra soil fall off. It doesn't need a whole lot to thrive. And I'm going to squeeze it into that little nook cranny there, and it's just going to trail over the edge, giving me a little bit of color and texture on the back side of my pot. So now all that's left to do is fill some of these little cracks and spaces. So I actually use a finger and feel down in between the plants, and if your finger can push in there, then that means that's an air pocket that you have to fill to make sure that roots can grow there. So I'm just going to sort of push around the material so that my fingers stay on the soil level, looking for any place that my fingers are sinking in, and that's where I'm going to add some more soil. A couple little spots here and there. And now you have a beautiful completed single fall planter. Now that you've had a chance to do your large pot, looking beautiful, you're going to move on to do your smaller pots per the diagram. So for the rest of the pots, we'll need another heuchera. So we've got this nice heuchera here in a quart-sized pot, and that's going to go sort of towards the back of our medium pot. Making sure that you have about an inch level, so if you have to dig out a little bit to get that to sit right, that's what you want to do. You want to have about an inch above it for a lip. We're going to add another one of these beautiful autumn ferns. We're going to add this to the left side. And smushing them together a little bit. I might turn this around so you've got a little taller frond so that it showcases itself a little bit better. And then our third item here is going to be this Carex Evergold, sort of a trailing grass perennial. It's actually a sedge. It looks like a grass, and it mimics that yellow that we had with our Lysimachia in our big pot, but with a different texture, just to add, you know, so you've got the grass texture repeating, you've got the colors repeating. Now we're going to add another one of these beautiful white kale. Again, sheeting it towards the front so that we can really show off that beautiful white face when that comes around. So I'm left with kind of a pocket of empty space in the middle, which I'm going to fill with about a handful of soil now while I have plenty of room to work in here. And then I'm going to bring over one of my pansies. These fire pansies have just the most awesome fall colors, like a sunset color. We've got just enough space. If we have to, we can just squeeze this very gently to get it in there, because this is a little bit more tender. We don't want to push too hard on the roots and separate the plug. So we've got our pansy there in the front, and then we have just enough room to slide in a little Lysimachia. And again, you can shake off some of the soil on this if you need to, because she's pretty happy to grow pretty much anywhere you put her. Okay, so I'm feeling around, making sure all of my little air pockets are filled. with soil so that when I'm watering, it's going to soak in and not just run down those cracks. Here's a little pocket. Really get your finger in there because sometimes they're sneaky little pockets, especially on the smaller pots. You really need to make sure the water is effective. And now, last but not least, we have our little pot, which is just going to be a nice trio, repeating some of the same elements from our earlier pots. So we have, again, our autumn fern. It's going to give us some height. We've got our kale, which is going to give us that nice, huge leaf texture. And then we have our last pansy, which we're going to tuck in the front. And this can really rotate, so as, you know, if the pansy's looking really great, you can rotate it towards the pansy. If the kale starts to get a nice color, you might rotate the kale towards the front. It's pretty flexible, okay? So we're going through and making sure everything is really nicely filled to the top, or a little bit below the top, I should say, and then going around the edge. Just make sure on all of these you have about 1 inch so that when you water it doesn't just run off. And now you have your trio ready for fall. Nicely updated. Just give it water. You're going to want to check it every couple days at first. It won't take quite as much water as your summer pots did. And a lot of this stuff will come back in the spring if you have it in kind of a sheltered spot and you don't take the pots apart. So you'll have some perennials for the garden in the spring as well. So thanks for joining us. And now it's your turn. Time to put those pots together, pour yourself a glass, and have fun.